Hey there, it's Silver. This is Helskate. So, Helskate is a roguelite that's kind of like if Hades and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater got together. That's basically what's going on here. This game is all about skating through various arenas and defeating enemies to go from area to area, build up various rewards and make yourself stronger, and then complete skating competitions and boss fights in order to progress past the sort of demon kind of guy who is running the show down here and is keeping you from finding a beach for some reason. So this is a really fast, very colorful game. It's got like a super high-speed gameplay loop, but once you get used to it, which I'm still in the process of, it is a really good time. It is in early access, and it does have a ways to go. There are some clear bits that need work, and a clear lack of content in certain areas and things like that. It just came out into early access, so all of this is very much understandable, so I'm judging it based on what's currently here. And so far, what's currently here shows me that they have a really unique idea for a game that I'm excited to see flourish into something larger. What they've managed to do is create a gameplay loop that is equal parts combat and skating without actually focusing on one or the other to the detriment of its opposite. So you have to do a lot of both, and you can't really ignore one or the other. They're both super important, which I was kind of surprised by because I was curious if maybe it was going to be almost entirely about skating and the combat was just going to be like a small aside, or the other way around, it was going to be like a combat-focused roguelite, but with just like a little bit of skating in it. But no, it's very balanced between the two, and you've got to get good at both at the same time, which means this game is actually, in my opinion, quite difficult. I found it to be really hard so far. I've not actually managed to fully complete a run yet. I've only managed to do a couple of successful skating tournaments and a couple of boss fights, so I'm still working on it, but it is really enjoyable, and its high difficulty mostly comes from the balancing act that you've got to pull from holding up like really high value combos and also managing to dodge attacks and kill enemies at the same time. It is surprisingly difficult to focus on getting good combos and not take a bunch of damage from enemies. It's actually really hard to introduce combat into a skating experience like this, but it does do it. So you've got a skateboard, and your skateboard is not a traditional skateboard, but is in fact a magic skateboard. And the magic part of it is that when you're on it, it manifests a weapon in your hands to use against the enemies of this place. Every weapon has a light attack combo that you can use while skating, and also a heavy attack that usually roots you in place for a second while you use it, but is super powerful. Although the heavy for the starting sword does not root you in place. It's actually like a sort of spin to win kind of idea, like a whirlwind slash, and you can still move while using it, although not as fast as you can normally move. You also have the ever-important dash that is easy for me to forget that you have. It is a dodge dash. You can use it to dodge through attacks. It's super important for avoiding damage. I just forget that I can do it very often because I'm focused on skating. And a lot of weapons also have a dash attack, where you can press the light attack button while dashing, and it will do a bit of a different attack. And in fact, the starting sword is actually specialized to use this dashing attack a lot more often, because it's super powerful, and it can even reset your dash, or at least it says it resets your dash if you get a kill with it. But so far I've found that that does not work, and no matter how many kills I get with my dash attack, it never actually resets my dash cooldown, so I don't know what's up with that. Probably just something that needs to be fixed. So you'll be plopped down into an arena and a bunch of enemies will spawn, and the way to actually get to the next arena is to kill all the enemies. Once you're able to kill the enemies, sometimes they spawn in multiple waves at different parts of the arenas, because some of them can be pretty large. They will spawn the reward that you earned, whatever reward you chose, and then a door that'll have 3 different options, and you can choose which of the 3 rewards you want, and you'll go to the next chamber. But of course it is a roguelite, and one of the major features of a roguelite is you're amassing equipment and skills and stuff to use from chamber to chamber, or arena to arena in this case, and the idea is to make yourself stronger as you go, and this game does indeed do that in a completely skate-themed way, which is pretty excellent. For instance, one of the things you can get is equipment, although in this case, rather than being like armor and weapons and stuff, it's skate merch. It's actually based on skate merch, and it actually shows on your character model, which is a really nice touch. You can get a hat, a jacket, pants, and shoes. And every different brand of skate merch in the game is based on different stats and stuff. So you may have a brand that's focused on bleed effects, or a brand that's focused on like acid damage and stuff like that. So you know that when you're choosing what rewards you want from the doors, the different brands coincide with different kinds of builds, basically. These will also have various different rarities, with higher rarity ones having just better numbers, basically. So whatever it is they do, a higher rarity version of that piece of merch will do it better. You can also find stickers, and these are smaller passive effects, kind of like passive items from a lot of roguelites. These also have rarities, and higher rarity stickers you slap on your skateboard, and they offer you all sorts of different potent effects, like maybe exploding corpses or something like that. You can also get various materials and currencies and stuff that you can spend both in and out of run, and the most important, in my opinion, and most interesting part are the tricks, because of course this is a skateboarding game and you're going to be doing lots of tricks to get sick combos, and one of the things you can do is get new tricks, or rather tapes, that modify your tricks in order to cause them to do special things. So you may get, for instance, a kickflip missile, so every time you do a kickflip it shoots a homing missile out of your skateboard. Or maybe you can upgrade your melon grab, so every time you hold a melon, your next melee attack will do a bunch of increased damage, and the longer you hold it, the more it stacks up. This is a really cool idea, and in my opinion it's also really smart, because this bridges the gap between the trick skateboarding gameplay and the combat gameplay, and it makes them not feel like two separate things that just happen to be in the same game. Instead, they actually feel like they inform each other, because you need to make like high value combos and stuff to get a better score. And also, if you want to heal yourself, healing is pretty rare in this game, and the only reliable way to heal yourself is to get a high point combo with a kill at the end of it in order to sort of earn a heal. And the farther you go into a run, the higher the combo needs to be and the more kills you need to get that reliable heal. So the idea to effectively enchant your tricks in order to make them have a combat use is really smart. I think it makes a lot of sense to join those two worlds of how this game works together in a cohesive way, and I think it works very well, because it's fun enough to skate around and try and get a really good combo on a really good spot going, but it's even cooler to know that some of the tricks you can do have an actual combat focus to them, and you can use them in order to unleash some damage or buff yourself up for combat later or something like that. It's just a really cool idea. I also really like that a lot of them, they have stackable effects. Like, you know, if you've got a kickflip missile, you can do a whole bunch of kickflips real fast and have like a missile storm. Or if you have a grab that enchants something, you can hold the grab, and the longer you hold it, the better the enchantment gets. So it's not just a fun idea, it's also really well integrated into the gameplay to make sure that going around and skating is never a separate world from actually involving yourself in combat. There are quite a few tricks to actually do. There's not like a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater amount of tricks, but there's a lot. You've got flip tricks on the X button, grinds on the Y button, and grabs on the B button. And you can use each of them with different directional inputs to do various tricks. You've also got manuals and nose manuals, and those are done in the exact same way as the Tony Hawk's games. You just press down up or up down real fast before you land in order to do a manual. Also, manuals and grinds have the classic balance gauge that you got to keep in the middle to not fall off. Although you actually won't bail in this game. I have a feeling they made it that way so that, well, if you fell off your skateboard and you lost control of yourself for a couple seconds and you're surrounded by enemies, then you would just die every time, and it would probably be super frustrating. So I have a feeling that's why they made it to where you can't actually fall off your board, but if you fail a grind or a manual, then you'll just stop doing it and fall off the rail and stuff like that. So it's still penalized. You don't want to do it, but you won't actually like faceplant. There are some other objectives as well that you'll find, because once you beat all the enemies in a level, you're not kicked out of it. You can free skate around it as much as you want before you choose the door and move on. And some of the other things you can do involve like skating over certain spots or finding lines, finding the letters of Helskate, kind of like how you had to find the skate letters. That's a nice little bit of nostalgia, I think. And there's also some other stuff to gather, because there is some meta progression. So in terms of meta progression, what's currently in the game is relatively small, but it does show the intent of what they want to add, which is cool. For one, you've got various kinds of gems, and you've also got some materials that you can find. And you can bring the gems to a tattoo shop back in the hub area between runs, which is like an abandoned mall. And you can also skate around it as much as you want. It's a pretty fun spot. But the absurdly attractive tattoo demon lady who helps you out, she will take those gems and give you tattoos, and tattoos are like permanent upgrades. So things like the ability to revive or the ability to heal in between rooms and stuff like that. So these are your like big meta progression upgrade paths. And the tattoos do actually stay on your character too, which I really like. And then the other character at the hub that you can spin some stuff with is for all the other kinds of gems and all those materials, and that's a lady that sells new decks. And of course, since a deck is also a weapon, these are basically like your classes or your builds. The decks will give you different statistics and a new weapon to try and some new like light and heavy attacks and all that stuff. So you want to make as many as you can to have as many to try out as you can find. I have a feeling as they add more and more of these, some of them are going to be really difficult to obtain or require some really hard to find materials and stuff. But yeah, so that's pretty cool because this means that you get an entirely new set of weapons and all that stuff and a whole different playstyle, so they're fun to try out. In Run, you'll also come across some other big milestones, like sometimes you'll come across the big bad dude himself and he'll have you do a skating competition where you have to just go in this sort of vert-focused skate park that he seems to live in, and just get as many points as possible, and a whole bunch of other NPCs will be trying to beat you. And if you're able to actually beat all of them and get a ton of points, then you'll earn a star, and you can spend this star to upgrade one of your character stats, like upgrade your ollie, which gives you a double jump, or upgrade your spin, which lets you spin more times more quickly in the air for more points and stuff. And there's also, of course, the boss fights. You'll come across some boss fights. These are like just more difficult versions of normal enemies that will reward you with some really useful upgrades and gear and stuff afterwards, and then you'll move on. They're not super hard right now, and in fact, I think they might be a little bit buggy. The first one I ever fought kind of got stuck in the ground and didn't move, so that might need a little bit of work, but that's okay. As far as the early access goes, there are a couple of tips that I have, a couple of things I'd like to see. For one, the most obvious thing is, of course, just more tattoos and more decks, but I'm sure that's coming. That's the sort of thing that is, of course, going to be added over time. But I would also like to see some more tricks. Just having more trick variety in general is fun, but it's also really useful because that gives you more possibilities to enchant to make a more varied and interesting build. I'd really like to see stuff like maybe a boneless to get some extra air off the ground. That would be useful. And I'd like to see stuff like the laser flip and some more advanced flips because those are just fun. The game does have a hard flip, which is similar, but not quite the same. I also think the vert gameplay needs a little bit of love. So in the Tony Hawk's games and similar games like that, the way that vert it works, the way that makes it work better is that you have a sort of combination of buttons you can press to right yourself in midair. So if you want to transfer over a spine, or you want to vert up to a differently oriented platform somewhere else, you press, it wasn't like L2 and R2 at the same time. I haven't played one of those games in a while, it's been too long. But yeah, you have like a button combo you can press to right yourself. This game does not have that. You cannot do any sort of like right yourself while verting. What you can do is dash, and that's sort of what you're meant to do. You can dash in the air. However, this only makes your feet point towards the ground, not towards whatever ramp you're trying to transfer to, and it also moves you quite a distance through the air, which means you're not going to come down where you just were. So all of this makes the vert gameplay feel a little bit undercooked, like it's missing a tool that you need to be able to make it work better, you know what I mean? I would also really like to see the star system changed a little bit, because the way that it works right now, all these star upgrades, like the double jump and the extra spin speed and stuff like that, they all feel like meta progression items, except you lose them when you die. And I don't think it makes sense to take them all away from the player, because it seems to get harder and harder every time you get to one of the skating competitions. It seems like they get more and more difficult, so you're losing these stars, but earning the same star back again is harder than last time. There are also like several dozen of these stars that you can actually earn, so it makes more sense, in my opinion, to allow the player to choose one of the earned stars that run to keep whenever a run ends, so that they can actually slowly build up these stars. I think it would be a much better idea to allow the player to keep one at a time, because they feel like meta progression. They feel like they have the sort of energy of what a meta progression should work like, but you lose them when you die, and that just doesn't quite make as much sense to me. I would much rather be able to keep one and slowly earn my way to a more powerful experience. The skating physics themselves are not bad, in my opinion. They actually feel pretty good. If I was to describe how the skating feels in this game, I would say it's kind of like Tony Hawk's Underground 2, but faster and lighter. It doesn't feel quite as weighty as that game did. It's a little bit faster in general, but it feels kind of similar to that. I actually think it's a pretty good start for how the physics of this game should feel. I think it does need a little bit of tweaking in small aspects, like how wall runs can maybe extend you a little bit further than they currently do. It's a weird combination of some of the things like a relatively low jump and a low wall ride distance, making it seem like your character is heavy, but in practice your character feels very light, like almost weightless, and can move around very fast. So it's just a little bit of tweaking maybe could be used to improve how, in general, certain actions feel, but I still think it's a really good start. There's also a surprisingly large variety of voice acting in the game already, and it's quite good in my opinion. It sets up some fun characters that I'm excited to see how they grow throughout the early access campaign, and I like the voice acting that's currently here, so I'm excited to hear more. Also, the soundtrack is pretty good. A lot of it's not exactly my thing. I mean, I listen to metal, but that's not really important. The important thing is it fits for the game, I think, and I would like to hear some more variety of it too, because what's currently here is nice. It's, you know, it's hard to compare to something like the Tony Hawk's games. I don't think it's a fair comparison, because that's like a very expensive licensed soundtrack that's extremely good, and I don't think it's reasonable to expect a much smaller indie project to have that kind of star power to it, but I still think it does fit the game well. So my current view of Helskate is that it's a really fun skating-focused roguelite with some really cool ideas, a nice art style, and some killer skating and combat sort of mixed together in a way that's really smart and a way that helps them inform each other because of the cool trick enchanting system and stuff. And I'm excited to see what gets added. I definitely want to see it get more polished and get more content in general, so I will be updating you guys eventually once this game builds up some large updates and has a bunch of new stuff to show off. So I'll put the link in the description below this video to the Steam store page for Helskate if you wish to check it out yourselves. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.